sell certain things, but to me, no matter what you do, if you learn how to grow companies, you can have products that aren't maybe the best product. And in some of my experiences, we've actually done that. So I think learning how to grow is key. And I think one of the most critical things, you can't outsource growth. To me, understanding your business, the whole growth aspect of creating that growth engine is this type of thing that feeds your product development cycle, it feeds your business development cycle, and you really need to be, to me, you need to be front and center. I think if you don't do that, you run a lot of risks. A lot of product development people, whenever things aren't working out from a growth perspective, their answer is, let's make some more features. They don't really dig into what the real issues are from a growth perspective. There are tons of resources out there, and I'm gonna, on almost every one of my slides there, I'll have growth hack. I actually hate that word, so it's sort of tongue-in-cheek. It's really, to me, it's growth and market development, customer development, those are all sort of the same thing. Fundamentally, you can't do growth analytics. Much like Amy's sort of spreadsheet, I have equivalents. I look at things all day long. I look across multiple tool sets. I'll talk about some of those specifically. And here's Foursquare. Foursquare is an interesting one to use because Foursquare sort of leveraged sort of two things. Early on in the mobile space, when the shelves on smartphones were fairly small in terms of different competitive products, they were there. Then they also started doing a number of things with influencers, and then that sort of inflection point was actually South by Southwest one year. Twitter did a similar thing as well. So that's, finding different ways to grow, I think, for many businesses is fundamental. I think an important thing to understand about the people who speak to you too is their bias. So here are my biases. I don't do SaaS, I don't do B2B, I'm a consumer guy. I've done lots of web-based companies I've been involved in, but heavily mobile. So my experience, a lot of what I'll talk about is very mobile-centric. I think a lot of the concepts apply in terms of how you think about your business, but just want to be clear on my biases up front. And I have done physical products. So I've been to China and dealt with some of those things as far as your lead times and tools and dies and stuff that are real painful. So growth hacking. I think when you talk about growth, and Janine sent me this, there's so many topics to talk about that you could do. Each one of these topics here somewhere are things that you could spend hours on a course. So I think from a value perspective, my goal was to actually focus on real world practical experiences. And because you guys are more newer startups, real tactical things that hopefully you can exercise and use. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. So I'm going to talk about some companies. So I was at a company, I was working at Universal Music in Los Angeles. I was asked to come down to look at a company called mp3.com to see if it was an opportunity or a threat. I met with a bunch of people. I came back and I said, it's both. It's an opportunity for me and a threat to you, and I quit. And I literally started the next day. So mp3.com is a fascinating company. I'm still friends with Michael Robertson to this day. They ran a company called FileZ back in 1997, and FileZ was looking at different, it had a whole bunch of shareware files and things like that. And they all of a sudden noticed that a whole bunch of people were coming to their site searching for MP3. And they're like, what the hell are MP3s? So they kind of figured out, it's these music files that people apparently want. They negotiated the acquisition of the domain for probably about 50 grand, and then it kind of took off. And so when I think about what this was, it really is about looking at your data. And a lot of it's about search engine optimization. So from a strategy perspective, when you think about how you want to grow your business, how do you get found? What are the things people are looking for? What is the market? We talked before about like sort of Kickstarter. Our Kickstarter products around agriculture are those things that work. So those are things you want to look at. Michael's particularly smart about looking at trends. He's a character, so I'll stick with that. But that doesn't grow a business. Just finding a domain and getting lucky that traffic is going there and the trend of music is going to digital. So what they actually did, and what we did over a period of years, and I joined right before we went public about a month. I eventually became the COO when we were public. The site became an artist publishing platform. Think WordPress for bands. So independent artists, garage bands could actually come in, upload their content, and tell their friends to come download the music there. And so I didn't put the metric in here, but if you looked at from about, call it, the second half of 1999 through the time we sold the company in 2002, every single day, without fail, about 800 bands would upload about 2,000 songs. And that was just a machine that kept coming and going and going and going. And it's very difficult to find these sort of content engines that create that. But if you create these platforms that allow people to publish content, and they have a vested interest in promoting your site, by promoting their own products, then that's a great thing to do. My current company kind of has a similar sort of angle. But trying to figure out those things. What are ways to engage your consumers or your potential customers, or in driving your business forward as well? Again, it's not obvious, but it was a fascinating thing because a lot of people said because they had the domain, that's why the business grew. That had nothing to do with it. It really was creating this content engine that over time allowed audience to come. And what happened was at the beginning we had a bunch of really crappy bands. By the time we sold the company, we had every band on the planet, including people like Madonna and whatnot. Also, if you want to interrupt me anytime, please do, because I like to be interactive, so you can do that now if you want. So that was one company. After that company, a little ways, not too much further than that, I founded this company called Intercasting with a couple other co-founders. So if you think about before smartphones, there were these feature phones, flip phones, StarTACs, all kinds of bizarre things. And early on, Verizon had this platform called Brew, which was an application platform powered by Qualcomm. And there were companies at the time, a company called Jamdat was founded. The CEO of that company was a guy named Mitch Lasky, who's now at Benchmark, who did the Snapchat investment. He had an app called Jamdat Bowling, and he was one of 10 apps on the deck at Verizon. And so there's a store, and this store, this Walmart, only has 10 products, and one of them was Jamdat Bowling. Well, Mitch sold that company for $600 million. So at this time, we were all looking at ways to get in, and my co-founder in this company had done one of the first ringtone businesses, which I mocked repeatedly because I said this is Pet Rocks, which I still believe it is, but people were buying Pet Rocks. And so we actually managed to get a deal with Verizon in 2004. When we launched our company, we got in Time Magazine, and it was interesting. And so, but to get to that point, there's a whole bunch of stuff we had to do. We had to create product for every single handset. So unlike creating an application for iOS for all iOS phones, it was more like Android, where you have the Samsung Android phones and the Google Android phones and the LG Android phones, except for there were about 100 different platforms, and it was really terrible and painful. But again, we used business development to grow, because once you're on the deck, people would buy your stuff. It just happens, because there's only so many things. It wasn't like the world of today where there's 2 million apps. So ultimately, after getting on Verizon, it was a good bit of a slog. They required us to be a paid application, and so one of the things about customer acquisition, when you make people pay, you have about a 90% fall off before they decide to use your product. And so we ultimately pivoted the company into a white label platform for carriers. So we actually went out and did deals with AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint. Sprint ultimately invested in the company as well, and we became sort of the category manager for the carriers into up-and-coming social networks. So at the time, kind of before this, it was a site called Zanga, there was LiveJournal, and then sites like MySpace came out, Twitter, Facebook, which was sort of fascinating because over a period of time, from a growth perspective, we were growing maybe 10,000 users, 50,000 users, and it was very slow and it was painful. There were churn issues, there was people paying us issues, and so when we kind of switched to this model, we actually managed to preload our application on every single phone for Sprint. So we actually sold the company before we found out how that played out. But within about 30 days after getting that live, we were on about 1 million phones and just escalating very quickly. But again, the interesting part from my growth perspective or market development perspective was we were leveraging carrier networks. We were leveraging their store space, and we were also leveraging the brand of the big social networks that had huge audiences. And again, I'm not suggesting these are all easy to do, but when you think about your strategies to grow, are there ways to leverage relationships to make those sorts of things happen? And I think that's one way you want to be thinking about your business. I was not the founder of this company. I was brought in to try to turn this company around by my investors. Very fascinating company, also San Diego-based company. Chumby was conceived as a squeezable, hackable Pandora alarm clock about 1.5 years before smartphones. So this is before the iPhone, and it's a really bizarre device. It's really fun. And to this day, people nerds who say, "You're the CEO of Chumby? How cool!" I'm like, whatever. But the interesting part from a strategy perspective, Amy had mentioned PR, and I did like 5 press releases this fall, doing some big announcements, so it made sense the type of press we were doing. But I do believe there's power to it. You just have to be careful how you do it. The way they launched was Bunny Wong was one of the founders of the company, and he was the first person to ever hack the Xbox. So he has huge hacker cred. He's in Singapore now. He does all kinds of weird cybersecurity stuff and hacking stuff. And so they unveiled this device at Food Camp. Food Camp is this super nerd gathering that Tim O'Reilly has up in the Bay Area, north of the Bay Area. And it was super hot, and they really caught on fire. There was a lot of great word of mouth when the product came out. Sold a lot of them, but the bill of materials costs were higher than the cost of the product. And so that was a problem. But from a starting point, there was a lot of buzz. Probably sold about 25 to 50,000 units just on that, at a price point of about $250 at the time. They switched around their strategy. How do you keep growing from there? Once you have all the nerds, then you have to try to get to mass consumer markets. And so to do that, there was a very long, extensive negotiation with both Best Buy, and I came in right about the time we were doing Sony, to create white label products for Best Buy. So we had 2 devices for Best Buy. One was a picture frame, one was a little alarm clock. They did a terrible job of marketing the product. It was on a shelf of like weird technology toys, not really a consumer usable device. Sony though, marketed the living hell out of it. They actually included Sony videos and movies, and ultimately sold about 250,000 units. We ended up we came to the conclusion, I had pivoted the company away to smart televisions, and then we just sort of ran out of time. They'd raised $26 million over time and whatnot. But the funny part was at that time, I sort of came to the conclusion that you can grow as much as you want, but the size of the market is what it is. And the size of the market for internet connected alarm clocks in that time, in 2009, was about 250,000. Which is really ironic because I had lunch with Steve, the founder, last week, and Amazon Echo Show and Google announced 4 of these devices at CES this year. So, one of the things too you have to think about as you're going along is, are you too early? And that sort of things. But again, from a, not the same thing as working with the carriers' social networking, but leveraging brands and sales channels. One thing we did do is we actually got into Costco, and that was a disaster. And it wasn't a disaster because we didn't sell any, it was because they made you carry substantially large inventory levels, the return policies were egregious, the margin targets were terrible. And so when you do go into those channels, you have to be real thoughtful about that. We did a lot more online. We did some mood deals occasionally to liquidate inventory that was sort of interesting and build buzz, but for what it's worth. So my current company is called ScoreStream. It's a crowdsourcing platform, and sort of our thesis was that interest in local sports hadn't disappeared, just the newspapers and journalists that covered it. And so we were inspired by the traffic application Waze. We felt that you could crowdsource real-time sports information and feed that back out to consumers and media companies. And if you think about the problem set, in the fall for American football, each week you have 16 pro football games each week, 100 D1 college games, about 7,000 high school football games. And so that's sort of the problem set we went after. We bootstrapped it, and Janine's seen me pitch this for over the years, since 2012. And it was always a science project for about 2 years, and it was like we sat down with co-founders saying, should we keep doing this, should we keep doing this, like every 6 months, or should we just walk away from this? After 2 years, we ended up raising capital, and we've just recently raised money from Intel, Verizon, Sinclair. We've got actually 8 strategic investors in the company that are all sort of aligned with what we do in different categories. But growth for this has been really hard. It's been hard because it's pure consumer, and it's trying to find different clever ways to do this. So when we started the company, one of the first things we had come along was we were creating applications to allow people to post scores, and our first version of the app only allowed you to post to Twitter, Facebook, and SNS. And our thesis was that only about 5% of people would ever create content or score a game. So we knew that every consumer who got to download our app, 95% of them would delete it in 5 seconds. But we got to the point where people were actually interested in what we were doing, and so we built the whole app. Along the way, we had a radio station here in San Diego, the Mighty 1090, and they had just signed a deal with the CIF San Diego section to cover 1 high school football game per week. And they said, hey, can you help us find the scores for the other 40 games each week? And so we did this JavaScript iframe widget. We're like, this is stupid, but yeah, okay, we can do that, sure, no problem. That has been one of the best growth engines we've ever had. We power the USA to Super 25. We have about 15,000 of those deployed all over the internet. All of those have massive SEO juice. There's not a single high school word you can think of that we're not in the top 10 for in terms of pure web traffic, driving back to our mobile customer acquisition framework. And so we sort of have a tier for media companies, and then we have a tier for anybody. You can come along, create a widget right now, and get scores. While we did high school originally, we also do college, pro, youth, and a lot of international stuff. So again, I'd say this was for us, it's been really leveraging partner traffic, and our whole thing was we would not do white label. You had to have our giant logo there. Every one of these links is clickable, and then we have a download the app piece that's on the screen. and then embedded in that we had SEO linkage. So that's worked really well. And if you told me that was going to work, I would have never believed you. The other thing we've done really well is App Store optimization. So the challenge of being an app, a lot of people build these really cool apps, the best app ever, and I put it in the App Store and people are going to download it, and they don't, because they don't. And so you have to figure out ways to do that. And so for us, we started looking, once we decided to build the product out in a pretty full way, we would go in and there's like things like Tapjoy and some of these weird places where you can buy downloads and stuff. And we would submit a new build, lay out a series of new keywords, and then we'd go buy like 5,000 downloads. And all those downloads would churn out in a day. I mean, there was no retention. It was pure junk, mostly click farms from overseas. But you would see the effect you had in the charts, so you could understand which keywords you could possibly win, which keywords had volume, which keywords could you win, and then over time, those are the things that we would evolve our company to. Along the way, we use a variety of tools, and literally I have these on my phone. I've been looking at them tonight periodically. You know, where are we tracking? What keywords are we doing? Algorithms change periodically. But literally, again, on both iPhone and Android, on any sort of high school related keyword you look for, I'm 1 or 2 in every category. You know, high school field hockey, high school ice hockey, you know, high school everything. That drives only so many users though, and so you have to understand what that is, and that sort of becomes an issue of like, once you get the App Store optimization down, you have partners driving traffic to you, how many downloads can you get? And that sort of becomes a bounded number. And then you try to figure out how do you break out past that, which is something we're working on. But again, if you're doing mobile App Store optimization, I would say the same thing happens for you if you're doing SEO for e-commerce or paid social or any of those sorts of things. It's the same sort of concepts, that it's a daily fight, you're having to look at it consistently, and it's results driven. So affiliate social. One of the things we did early on, which was very similar to mp3.com. So mp3.com, band comes in, uploads their stuff, and away we go. With ScoreStream, we did a different approach. There are 25,000 high schools in the country. We took this really ugly picture of a high school, and that ugly picture is on every single one of those pages. And I think it's Cunningham's law where they say, you don't ask the internet for a question, you give it a wrong answer, and then people will fix it for you. And so people come to us and say, hey, you moron, that's not my school. We're like, right, it's a stock photo. Do you want to be the general manager? Would you like to fix it? You want to upload your logo? You want to schedule games? How much to score some games? And so that's been a really effective thing for us. We're up to about 4,000 schools that have at least one general manager. Many of the schools have 24, some for specific sports. And part of what we do with them is we've created feature sets that allow them to do things. So you can actually use our platform on our app, score a game, update your scoreboard, post to Twitter, post to Facebook. And so that's been good. And so over time though, beyond those aspects of it, we've also created partnerships. So the Associated Press now uses us to report high school football scores. So if you want your scores in the paper, use ScoreStream. That's one way to do that. And in many markets across the country, we've gotten to the point, like in Atlanta, where we have the top 3 TV stations, every radio station in the market. We have scores, photos, and videos going into Buffalo Wild Wings, Hooters, Associated Press, and things like that. And then along the way, we have sort of internet magic points, you know, sort of gamification. You have different levels. You start out as a rookie, you eventually become an all-star, a veteran, that kind of stuff, and people love that stuff. We actually have a cheer button in the app, so you can cheer. It's non-unique. And we have games in Texas and Florida where people push that button 500,000 times on each side over a period of about 3 hours. It's just insane. But again, and also Snapchat. So Snapchat, we've worked with them for the last 2 years. They've been great partners, and what we do with them is, because we have so much data of scoring of games, because we have games where like maybe 2 people score a game, maybe 100 people score a game, and so we use algorithms to determine who's telling us the right scores and whatnot. And so for Snapchat, on a Friday night for about 5,000 games, if you're within 500 meters of the 50-yard line and you take a snap, one of the filters is the score of the game at that point in time and the colors of the teams. And that's been really good. It doesn't have our brand on it, but a lot of the schools know that that's us, and they come to us and become general managers. We give them jobs to do for free. So I'd say growth is a daily battle. This is our last. This was during the football season, so we got to number 22 in sports. We actually got to number I think 9, and we were the top 1,000, 898 in the App Store of all apps in the U.S. And that has been purely through organic, purely through App Store optimization, purely through distribution. You can't buy that. And it's really hard to do that, but you can do it. I think the lessons to be able to do that for a specific vertical or a specific product are all different, but it takes that diligence and that work to make it happen. Yeah. So this is, again, going back to that earlier slide about lots of stuff. This is actually, if you're doing mobile app store optimization or mobile customer acquisition or mobile growth, this is actually a pretty useful one. I actually use this one. But the reality is, of these sort of 50 boxes, I probably focus on about 20 of them. But again, there are similar things for whatever you do, whether it's customer acquisition, whether it's SaaS pricing models, the offer models. There's different ways to do it. So, hopefully the anecdotal stuff is more valuable. But I would definitely find a model and commit to a model, whatever that model is, and then work it. I mean, I think again, at the beginning when I said that it's core to your business, I believe it is. And certainly, I do a lot of different things. I do business development, I do other things, but growth is key, especially in consumer markets. So today, we're growing. Last week we grew 88% year over year, which is like 2 years in a row of almost double-digit growth. But I want to go faster. How do I go 10x? 2x is good, but I need to go faster because a big part of our business model is media, and you just have to get to tremendous scale to make money on that. And that has its own set of challenges. So for us, this is this picture I'll share. This is the Geneva Seahawks. They're one of the first teams to find us in Europe. We actually have been covering American football across Europe now for 2 years. During the summer, our mobile traffic, when high schools are out of session, are 50% international. And it's the UK, American football leagues, Germany, baseball in France, basketball in Spain. And so it's interesting. So we're now thinking about how can we take our approach to the market that we've done in the United States internationally. The use cases are different, the problem sets are different, but a lot of the lessons from a growth perspective are the same. And so it's trying to figure out how we can translate that. So with that, there's my contact information if you want. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Where's your revenue coming from?
Yeah, so we don't make much. Venture capital. We've raised $6.8 million to date. We just over 200,000 this year. So it's advertising. So we do mobile ads, we do web ads, and that's not much money at all. People like Snapchat pay us. People like Buffalo Wild Wings pay us. We syndicate content out to them, so scores, photos, and videos. And that's the bulk of it so far. Yeah. But our burn's low. Small team, 10 people, and to everybody scalable. Like 10 people, I can do all the United States. 10 people, I can do the world at all levels. We're doing some deals with the NFL. So there's other deals we're doing. Like we work with some of the stats companies and stuff like that. We work with the NFL. I'm flying with Pro Bowl this week to do the NFL flag football championships. And some of those deals, they'll pay us for certain things we do. But it's not a bit product driven.
I'm really interested in learning more about how you optimize for in this case, it was like the iPhone optimization or their iTunes or whatever, but just in general, like understanding that a little bit better. You were searching for keywords, you were finding what people click on, and then you were using those keywords in your search criteria for your app.
You want high volume, low competition words. Okay. The reality is you're not going to find high volume, low competition. You're going to find medium volume, low competition. And so for us, like football, the word football is a terrible word because everyone in the world calls soccer football. So you're never going to win football. I can win high school football. I can win Texas high school football. So it's finding words that have enough volume and enough heft to actually be worthwhile to win. You can win a word, I could win the word xylophone, but there's no traffic and it doesn't convert, does it mean anything to me?
What do you mean by win, by the way?
Be first search result.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Is that by spending money?
No, just organic search. We don't do much paid. We do a little bit paid, just messing around. So that's the thing. Actually, we do always do paid. I'll spend on a given day, or any given month, I'll spend maybe a couple $100 just testing stuff. But so for a free application, so customer acquisition for her products or your products, you can spend $20, $30, $50, $300. I can't spend more than 25 cents. Guess what? There are no channels that are less than 25 cents. So we test them all the time to see what's working. So, today Facebook's $1.50. I just spent $50. Twitter, I got down to 45 cents. I've got Google down to 33 cents for Google Play. That's still not sustainable. You don't make any money. So you have to be thoughtful about that. But it's trying to get, how can I get first result position, whether it's web or app store results from a search perspective. The delta between, so for Texas high school football scores on the web, we got to number 2 this year. We'll get to number 1 next year. the delta between the 1 and 2 are tremendous. The amount of traffic you get on Texas high school football scores for 1 is so much greater than 2, and 6 of them matter. So it's those types of things. So it's trying to figure out how you can structure those types of stuff. And that all creates organic growth. If you win that, and you can win it consistently, it grows over time, and you reinforce your position.
Any tips on how to win?
Moz, we use Moz, and I would really dig into SEO around Moz and things like that. They have whole books about strategy around that. But it is the most desirable keyword you can possibly imagine you're ever going to win. So you have to find what are these niches and targets and things I can get where I can build. Because what happens is, what we've seen over time is our traffic goes in step functions. Like we get to a certain level, or we're good, and we can't really do anything to break out, and then something pushes up the next level. It's very rare that you just get runaway success. We've tried a whole bunch, I didn't mention any of this stuff on the product side, but we do a whole bunch of viral product type stuff and engagement interaction. The problem we have is our users are 50-year-old men. And 50-year-old men share an app with 2 people. My 13-year-old daughter shares with 100 people. And so, the things we're trying to do is like working with Snapchat, things like that. How do we young our audience up? How do you engage that? But barring those sort of things that are catching lightning in a bottle, it's just, it's blocking and tackling.
Do you have any suggestions to overcome the legal litigations? I think MP3 probably had litigation at one point about the CDs being shared online, something.
We paid $250 million in copyright infringement to all the record labels.
Right.
And then we sold the company for $372 million.
That's why I was asking you.
Yeah.
Have any suggestions, like we shouldn't even get there kind of thing, like the legal?
I don't mess with any legal stuff at all. I mean, I have a lot of experience with that. I understand all that stuff very well, as you can imagine. I would not do things to put yourself in jeopardy for anything, whatever it is. I mean, so there's some, YouTube is basically a massive copyright infringement platform that had just got bought before they got sued out of existence. But you saw Spotify just they're planning to go public in a couple months, and the labels hit them for $1.8 billion, and they'll get it. They will pay that. So certain businesses are tough to get into. Intellectual movies, music. Our stuff is all, we do scores, photos, videos, and chat, and our videos are all 30-second videos. So we don't do stuff like Periscope or Meerkat. We could, but if you do that, you start running licensing issues. Whereas high school doesn't have as many licensing issues like college or pro do, there are some. And there's issues around likeness, and there's issues around a whole bunch of stuff. And we do our best to avoid that as much as possible.
If we have any kind of clauses in our terms and conditions while they download it, agree to them.
Yeah.
If we make it like solid proof, would that be still stand water, or?
Well, so in that kind of stuff, for us, we're very well versed in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So we're a registered DMCA agency. We respond to takedown notices, and so there's things that if you are in that type of business, you want to follow those rules because they're safe harbors. But you have to follow them to the letter. And so if you can do terms of service stuff, but that won't help you. Our users can represent that they own the copyright to a specific photo they upload. And in most cases they do, but sometimes they may not. They may take a picture off a TV. But it's not my responsibility to go looking for that, to find what's wrong or right. But if someone notifies me, I have a whole bunch of responsibilities, or I can be sued for lots of money.
Based on your experience, I was thinking you may have, if you include like any kind of indemnification in your terms and conditions.
We have all that stuff in there. We have.
But still, you get.
It's still the thing with startups. What I would say is that the issue isn't whether you're right or wrong. The issue is, do you have enough money to fight a lawsuit against somebody who has tons of money? Because that's really what comes down to. And I don't. But we actually had a lawsuit with somebody this last year. They ended up paying us something to change something they wanted, but I ended up paying $50,000 in legal fees. And I wanted to fight it, but it would have cost me maybe $250,000 to fight it. And I probably would have won, but it would have taken 2 years of my time when I need to be focusing on my growth acquisition strategy.
Okay, thank you, Derrick.